All right, welcome to week three. So, if you saw me talking about this group and Sleep for Smarties anywhere ahead of time, then you would have seen me potentially mention something I call the sleep confidence formula. And I want to share that with you today. And it really comes down to having this, like what I call a rock solid belief in your ability to sleep well, night after night, so that you're not so frustrated and that you can tap into sleep without having that kind of doubt that arises, and maybe even a little bit of fear that arises. And I just wanted to share that, I come at this not just as someone who decided to go get certified in, sleep coaching and helping other people with sleep, and then doing my neurosomatic certification as well to kind of go deeper into it, but as someone who like severely struggled with sleep. And I realized, this was several years ago, and I found myself kind of in a place where I was always like, I was super edgy. I was, always fairly reactive in situations. I felt that tiredness throughout the day. So that's when I started investigating sleep, because I didn't really know at that time the difference between being sleepy and being tired. And I was running a business that was pretty high pressure. I was working with some pretty big companies, doing a lot of work behind my desk, meaning I would have to be at my desk writing for long periods of time. I was doing copywriting and messaging strategy at the time. And I would have these nights where I would be awake in the middle of the night. I would like fall asleep fairly easily, but then I would have multiple wake ups. And every time I would wake up, I would reach over, look at my iPhone that was sitting on my nightstand. I would do that sleep math that we've all done. Like, okay, it's 2:45. If I can fall back asleep in the next 15 minutes, then I'll get, and you kind of go in this spinning loop. And for me at that time, it was very much, a lot of what was going through my mind was this stuff about, okay, if I don't get the sleep that I need tonight, I'm going to be totally screwed tomorrow. I have to write copy for this huge website. Like, how is my mind going to be on top of that? How am I going to be able to write these emails? And I would just go into this loop while laying there in bed at night, and or in the morning, if you will. And so I started, and then I started going, okay, well, I need to fix my sleep. I need to sort this out. And that was when I started doing some research on sleep. And I just like started to see all these headlines and all this information about how important sleep is. And oh my gosh, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to die and you're going to get cancer and all of these things. And that just like, now I had those thoughts in my head when I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, if I don't get back to sleep, oh my gosh, my health. Anyway, fast forward, I started doing some copywriting for an organization called Precision Nutrition. And this is where everything really changed for me, is because by being behind the scenes in that company, I actually started learning about like the truth about sleep and stress and that connection. I remember they had this, excuse me, I had to write this email for them about their certified sleep and stress management certification, sorry. And so I was reading this and I saw this graphic, and it was describing what they called stress bod. And I'm looking at this graphic of this person and all of the different symptoms of stress bod. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is me. These are all the things that I've been experiencing. And so that was what kind of flipped the switch for me. And I realized that I wanted to learn more about this, help myself, help other people with it. And it also made me realize it was like that kind of TSN turning point about my sleep specifically, where I was like, okay, I need to fix how I'm thinking about sleep. That was a big piece for me. And so I want to kind of go there today with you and see, just do some kind of poking around and see, what are some of your thoughts about sleep, and kind of how does this translate for you as it relates to your I'll say, ability to get a good night's sleep at night. So if you picture for yourself, it's 3 a.m., you wake up for seemingly no reason, like right away, you're not just kind of vaguely aware of your surroundings, you're really awake. I'm curious, do either of you have a sense of like what the first thought is that comes to mind for you? I remember thinking like, oh no, or like, here we go again, or all of those. Is there anything that you're aware of? And it's okay if you're not. This is not a test, but I'd love to know, is there anything that you're aware of when that happens for you?
Usually for me, it's like, what time is it? Which usually is somewhere between 2 and 3:30 in the morning. And then, oh crap, it's gonna take me so long to fall back asleep. Then I start to like get stressed about it, and then I toss and turn, and it's a stress. It's stressful. I find it stressful.
Uh, how
Yeah,
about
I'm
you,
really
Heather?
similar on that. I'm similar on the when I wake up, what time is it? And I'm not as consistent that it's three. Like sometimes it's 4:30, but even that's like, oh, 4:30 crap, I'm
And
not
I
looking to get up at 4:30 either. So
Yeah,
so yeah, there's some sort of math going on about what time is it and yeah.
and
And
I've
what
yeah.
unplugged my clock too, like next to my bed, so I don't actually see the time unless I pick up my phone and look at it. And I try
Mhm.
really hard unless I'm lying there for a while. And then I'm like, okay, what time actually is it? And then,
Yeah.
yeah, probably 8 or 9 times out of 10, it's somewhere around 3 o'clock.
Yeah. And how often, just while we're talking about that, how often would you say, how many nights a week are you actually picking up
Almost every
the
night
phone?
for me. I am,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's
Okay.
been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so then once you've got that kind of awareness there, um, what happens next? Like, how does it make you feel? If you could like think about an emotion that comes up when you're in that situation.
Anxious,
Yeah.
because all I want to do is sleep. I'm like, why can't I just sleep?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the word because I'm usually it's more like, oh, why am I awake? What did I do or not do that's caused this? 'Cause for me it's not every day is part of the so
Mhm.
I'm always in the oh I had something to drink too late or oh I didn't get any exercise or oh like because mine's more like maybe two maybe 3 nights a week so I then go into the you know trying to assess why.
Right. And I'm curious, Heather, do you have a good sense of why? Like, is it something fairly obvious for you?
Um, not, oh, I mean, I know a lot of unusual food late is
Hmm.
almost always a problem. And sometimes you're just like, well, I'm out and I'm doing it. So
Yeah, I
suffer
can
the
relate.
consequences. Um,
Yeah.
but no, there's not always a nice linear, connection between
Yeah.
A and
Okay.
B, or A and waking up in the night.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
definitely relate with what Heather says. Like if I've gone out for dinner and it's a heavier meal than normal, or I've consumed wine, then I'm pretty much 100% guaranteed gonna wake up at two sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 and have a harder time falling asleep.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, it's usually I just wake up, maybe I have to pee or whatever, and then I'm like stuck lying there stressing about being awake and not being able to fall asleep.
So fun, right? So
So fun.
fun. Yeah. Yeah. And it's good when we can pinpoint those um situations or moments we know, like, okay, I'm going out for a friend's birthday dinner and I know I'm gonna not be eating until like the reservation's not till 8 o'clock. I'm not gonna be eating till 9 o'clock, like, and we go, okay, this is gonna be one night where, yeah, maybe I need to just give myself a bit of grace and I know that's gonna happen. But yeah, when it's on a fairly regular basis, it can be really frustrating. I know for me, I would get like almost a little bit of a desperate feeling too, right? And super frustrated and and laying there almost kind of like resenting my sleep, and I associate with you too, Chelsea, when you say anxious, because I would start to feel that anxiety rise about what I was or wasn't going to be able to do the next day. And so here's kind of an obvious question for you, but I'm going to just ask it out loud. Like, do any of these feelings help you get back to sleep?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, no,
It's
they
similar
don't.
to when I'm trying to fall asleep. If all of a sudden I can't fall asleep, then I start to feel anxious and stressed and
Yeah.
that too. So, and
Yeah.
then I can't
Yeah.
fall asleep because I'm fretting and I'm thinking about something stupid that makes no sense whatsoever when I think about it the next day. And
Yes. Yes, exactly. And so this is what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy of insomnia thoughts. It turns out the way you think about insomnia is one of the best fuels for keeping insomnia going, unfortunately. And I say insomnia because, we've talked about, what insomnia actually is. If you were to get it clinically diagnosed, it is having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early 3 nights a week for at least 3 months, and it's having an effect on your day the next day. I say, and I've studied with a lot of other sleep professionals who say, like, you don't have to wait 3 months to get help with this. For some people, it's been going on for years. For some people, it's been going on for a month. And so as long as it is having an effect on your days, then yeah, like, let's get some help for it. So I want to just share with you, hang on one sec here. Just show you. See if we can do this here. You guys see my whiteboard?
let me change views. Oh, now I can.
Okay. All right. So this is kind of what it looks like. So when we have these automatic thoughts about sleep, and this is how thoughts work. This really applies to anything. I'm just going to show you this so you kind of have it in your head and you can have this awareness about it. Because awareness is kind of like, not kind of, it's super important. Once we're aware of these things, it can help us to change them more easily. All right, so we have this, oops, okay, just ignore. We're not going to take a bunch of time here to mess this. Okay, so here we have our situation, and that is basically can't fall asleep, or, you've woken up and you can't fall asleep. This is our automatic thought, right? Maybe for me, it was, I won't be able to function tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to get the work done that I need to get done. And then this is the consequence that comes from that. And so that is basically that emotion or behavior that we talked about. And this is the cycle of thoughts. Okay. And so while we're talking about this, I want to point out, like, we speak on average about 16,000 words in a day. Me, probably a bit more. Maybe if you are on calls doing presentations, whatever, maybe you speak more than that. Our like internal thoughts, whether it's during the day or during the night, produce thousands and thousands and thousands of more words going through our head. And most of the time, they are totally BS. Thoughts are not facts. So I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about sleep. Thoughts aren't facts. And when we become aware of that voice and we start kind of approaching it with more compassion, then we can start to change how our brain interprets our thoughts. And then we can start to change kind of what actions or behaviors we take from there. Okay. So that's why I want to show you this kind of how automatic thoughts usually work. So you can see how the automatic thought is the bridge between that emotion or that behavior, right? And we call these automatic because they can happen like super quickly, totally under the radar. We're often not even aware of having them. Like we know we just talked about we have this awareness of feeling frustration or anxiety or whatever. But we can start to experience this like almost where we see this direct link between not being able to fall asleep and then feeling terrible, right? And so, but the fact of the matter is, it's actually those automatic thoughts that are happening in the middle that are what are kind of fueling the flames. And so that's what we have to try and get dialed in, is starting there with those automatic thoughts that we have about sleep. So if we went from, say, you know, situation being can't fall asleep, and then our, automatic thought being be able to function tomorrow. And then from that, it's like anxious, tossing, turning, right? That's kind of where we're at right now. So what we have to do is start thinking about like, okay, and this takes practice, but it is totally in our control. So first things first, we want to start noticing our thoughts around sleep, right? So we can do that. We can do that in a very similar kind of way to how I've kind of outlined it here. So situation, automatic thought, emotion, or behavior. And you started to do that, Chelsea. You're aware of yours. Heather, you shared a little bit about yours as well. What we want to do is not judge those thoughts. It doesn't matter if they're true or false, positive or negative. We're just trying to notice what you think about sleep and what those thoughts are then leading to. And then what we want to do is take a peek at those thoughts and go, okay, we want to start asking some questions of those, because like I said, remember I said thoughts aren't facts, right? So if we look at those thoughts that we're having and we start to investigate, and we start to kind of uncover and go, okay, is this 100% true? Or is this maybe a prediction that I'm having, right? So have there been times when this wasn't true, right? You think about, for me, like, can't fall asleep, I'm not going to be able to function tomorrow. Is that 100% true? No, because there are times where I've had 5 hours sleep or 4 hours sleep, and I've been totally fine and able to pull it off multiple times. So you think about that for yourself, and then we start to think about, like, if this prediction is true, what's the worst that could happen, right? And then we start to think about, am I putting too much pressure on my sleep? Remember, I can't remember which week we talked about it, but just this idea of sleep effort. The more we try to sleep, the harder we try to sleep, it actually has the opposite effect that we want. It's like the opposite of everything else in life, right? Where we're told, like, okay, just work harder, do this, do that. If we try to work harder when it comes to sleep, it actually creates a worse relationship with sleep. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're really kind of examining those thoughts that we're having about sleep. And I know it's like, okay, yes, I already, like, we talked about this. I know what my thoughts are about sleep. I get it. I have these bad thoughts, or I'm thinking these automatic thoughts, but what is it, like, how is that going to help me? And so what it will do is we can then start to look at, okay, what is a more accurate thought? And as we start to create more accurate thoughts about sleep, because we know we're here, we're functioning. So if you had a bad sleep last night, like, you are still here, you are functioning, you are going through your day. It's like, as we start to kind of create those new thoughts about sleep and the fact that we are not going to die if we don't get sleep, all that type of thing, then we can actually start to create a better relationship with sleep. Like, you think about it, right? You think about how you have relationships with people, or, yeah, I mean, relationships with people. Just take whoever in your life, right? If you were in a situation where you wanted to get someone to do something for you, how would you approach that? Would you go up to them and be like, do this immediately? If you don't do this immediately, I am going to, whatever the consequence is. You wouldn't do that. That's not how you are. That's not how you speak. And so when you do that with your sleep, it's like you can think about it the same way. The consequences or the effects are going to be the same. You're not going to get what you want. So we have to kind of start thinking about how can we dial that back. So we want to become aware of our thoughts and consequences. We want to examine those thoughts, and we want to practice approaching sleep with kind of a more fair and accurate and helpful perspective. So we can do that, and you can do this on your own if you want to. And I'll share this in the WhatsApp as well. I'll maybe share a link to something that you can take a peek at. But essentially, we want to add a couple steps to this chart that you're seeing here. We want to come up with, so if we just pretend that this is at the end of that, then we want to start looking at, okay, what is the more accurate, fair, or helpful thought here, for this part? And think about this right now if you want to. If you've got something in mind that's coming to mind for you and you want to speak it out loud, let's talk about it. And then this section here, we want to really recognize the new emotion and behavior that comes from that new thought. So, you might have the more accurate thought here might be something like, I'm proud of myself for doing this work to help my sleep. I know it's not going to be perfect immediately, but I'm on my way. The new emotion or behavior might be that you feel even 5% better in that moment. You create a little bit less stress about sleep in that moment. And the moment you can do that, you start to create a better relationship with sleep. So this takes practice, like I said. It's not necessarily something that happens overnight. But if you can start to recognize your automatic thoughts about sleep and create these kind of more helpful thoughts, you will start to change the emotion and behavior that comes with them. How is this landing for the two of you? What's coming up? Share with me what's coming up for you. Good or bad, if it feels positive or negative. If you're like, Rebecca, this is stupid, tell me that too. If you're like, I don't know where to go with this, tell me that. If you're like, okay, this makes sense, I want to hear it all.
Well, for me, the word that you said earlier about sleep confidence is kind of what is resonating. So when you think about what's, accurate or helpful, is kind of the idea of, well, most of the time I can get to sleep, and most of the time I can get back to sleep. So instead of being like, oh gosh, I'm like, it's just not going to happen, sort of assume the best versus assume the worst.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And have the confidence that, yeah, okay, I'm up and I wish I wasn't, but I will fall back asleep more than likely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like being rational at that time. So I'm not always thinking rationally because I'm tired and I'm not, I guess, like present, but not fully present. So I always think like I automatically think the worst.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you're in that headspace, challenge, like for me, is like, how do I change that headspace when I'm not really in a rational headspace?
Yep. Great. Great point and great question. And so the first step is awareness, which we've just created, right? So that's the first step. So we've created awareness that this thing exists that's called automatic thoughts, and they're so unhelpful, and thoughts aren't facts. So we've just created that awareness. What can I do today to remind myself that thoughts aren't facts? Can I put that on a sticky note on my desk so that it is starting to get ingrained in my head, so that when I'm laying in bed at 3 a.m., I can remember when I'm laying there thinking, tomorrow's going to be total crap. What is wrong with me? Why can't I sleep? I'm doing all this work to sleep. Why is it not doing anything? I'm still awake. We can we can have that little bit of extra awareness and go, oh, there's those thoughts we talked about. Well, crap. Okay. Okay. So, and then turn that into a more, it doesn't have to be big. I don't want us laying there toxic positivity, you know, I am the best sleeper in the whole world. These thoughts are wrong. That's not what this is about at all. This is taking little tiny steps and creating that awareness. So that's one piece. The next piece of that puzzle too is using our tools, using our regulation tools. Because in that moment, when you are stressed about sleep, you're in a more activated state, right? I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Let me just see if I can. How do I get out of this? There we go. So you're in a more activated state automatically as your thoughts start ramping up, right? So this is where we then can go to our what I call low cognitive load. That's why we do our applied neuro tools. That's why we tap into those, is because they don't require any thinking. They just require a little bit of doing. And so in this moment, I'm going to share one with you right now that is a really good one for when we're laying in bed, like having these moments of anxiety and overactivity in our brains. And then we're going to talk a bit about conditioned arousal. So really helpful tool that is super, I'm going to share two with you actually. And these are both helpful because they can be done in the middle of the night, laying in bed without anybody knowing. If you have a bed partner that's not going to disturb them. And so the first one, well, first we got to do our assess, reassess. Heather, I think you probably, if you watched the first session, then you saw me do the assess, reassess process. Chelsea, did we do the trunk rotation on our last call? We did, yes.
I think so.
We did, yeah. So you can pick one that you like of the ones that I've shared. So we've got our shoulder, where we're looking at kind of how our shoulder range is, either direction. We've got our cervical rotation that we can use, just noticing the range of motion in our neck today. Or we can stand up. We can do trunk rotation. I find that it's hard to measure for me when we just do it. I do it down here, but you can do that if you want to. So pick one of those that works for you. You can also stand up if you want to and do a trunk rotation. So we're standing with our feet hip width apart, hands out in front, feet stay planted, and the rest of our body moves. And we just take notice of where our hands are landing in the room. Do it a couple times so you get warmed up. Just take note of where hands are landing in the room. I do like that one. I always if I'm getting a positive response on that one, it's usually it's usually good. So notice where you're standing so you can come back to that spot when we do our reassessment. And then what I want you to do is we're just going to do an ear massage. And so our ear vibration. And so this one, what we want to do, I'm going to take my glasses off, but we're essentially, this one we're working with our vagus nerve again. As I mentioned to you before, the vagus nerve and the brainstem are the two kind of nervous system parts that are most responsible for sleep. Vagus nerve, rest and digest, and the brainstem is where a lot of activity happens that helps with our sleep. So we just want to put our finger in this little divot that's kind of like above your ear canal hole, and do it on the left side. We do it on the left side for parasympathetic activation. And all we're going to do, I can already feel a little bit of a sigh coming. You can close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to. Just soften your gaze if you're not. And you're just kind of massaging in that little divot, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth if you want a little bit of extra parasympathetic activation, or just kind of breathing normally. when you're overly activated or having a hard time coming out of an activated state, even if that activated state is appropriate, you can do this during the day as well. Just a little couple more times. Back and forth. Just little circles in that ear pocket. All right. Perfect. Just take a breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then whatever assessment you did, let's reassess. And see if we got any extra range of motion there. How did we do?
I think there's a bit of extra range of motion.
A little bit extra, so positive. Yeah. How'd you do, Heather?
Yeah, I think I got a bit too.
Okay, so we can ramp this one up a little bit. Maybe just while you're sitting, do one more quick assessment, just noticing your neck rotation here. We'll just do cervical rotation together, noticing where your eyes are landing in the room. And then when you come back to me, watch me first. All I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the little kind of flipper flapper part of my ear. It's called the tragus. I like to call it the flipper flapper. And so we're going to just pinch it very gently in between your pointer finger and your thumb on both sides, just very gentle. We're going to pull, we're going to kind of twist gently and pull forward on both. So very gentle pinch, pull forward and twist a little bit. And again, let's take 3 breaths here. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This one, again, working with our vagus nerve. We're stimulating the vagus nerve in this case. Actually decompressing. Stimulation was the ear massage. We're decompressing the vagus nerve, which can often get pinched. Coming back, breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Good. And then let's reassess. How did we do on that one?
A little bit better.
A little bit better. Perfect. That's all we're looking for. We are not looking for like full, what's that cartoon? I'm like where it spins around. It's not what we're looking for. All we want is a little bit of positive, like heck yes from our nervous system, which comes in the form of some range of motion, because when the nervous system starts to calm, it releases tension. That's why we use that as an assess, reassess. Maybe next week I'll share with you, we've got some other ways to assess. We can use vocal tone, we can use breath. We'll probably do breath next week because we're going to really focus on that fueling for our brain next week. So okay, so that's a couple of drills. So back to what Chelsea was asking about, just in terms of, yes, thoughts. We can't just tell ourselves these things. We get into these little tailspins in the middle of the night. So if we can tap into the physical, remember everything starts in the body. Stress, which is what you're experiencing when you can't sleep, and that anxiety or those anxious feelings start up, that's a stress response. So we want to work with our physiology, which is where stress lives. Stress lives in the body. We want to work with that to help change that loop, to like poke a hole in that cycle, to break that loop. And so if you're doing that, well, you've created a bit more awareness around the fact that you're having these automatic thoughts that aren't helpful. That is a very important first step in being able to change what's happening in the middle of the night, allow your body to have that relaxation and go back to sleep, because that's what we have to do. We have to allow sleep to happen. We can't force it, like I said. Okay. Any questions about that or anything that's coming up that you want to share?
Just on the one where we were playing with the flipper flappers.
Yep.
It was interesting because on one side I really felt something through my jaw. Like, would that be unusual, or like there's just something? Yeah.
No, Nothing's unusual.
Okay.
Everything has a reason.
Okay.
So it could be that you have potential, like, have you had dental surgery on that side? Do you have like jaw
No,
stuff
I
typically?
sleep with a night guard and all that kind of stuff, so I have
Okay.
always like clenched. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
if
just
you're a clencher, it might be releasing something there that is has been causing, a bit of grief. Everybody's different. And so here's what I say to that. If it's causing you pain, we don't do it. We do not create more threat. So if you can even just pull on one side. So if one side felt better, was it that when you were pulling, it felt painful, or when did the
not
pain show
painful,
up?
but just like kind of, I don't know whether it was releasing it or whether like I just felt more there than anywhere else. So not
I,
necessarily a bad way, but just weird. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. It's super important to be aware of those feelings, and sensations, I should say, when they come up. So if it felt uncomfortable, I would say don't do it. It could be something where, so what happens with when we're doing applied neurology, we use these drills in a moment of stress to change our stress response. And then the next step with them is using them to rehab sensory deficits. So it could be that you have some deficit on that particular side, and you could use this drill in between your other high payoff drills to rehab and help to decrease that sensation if it's uncomfortable. So that's kind of like the next step with these is that nervous system rehab and training. For the purposes of what we were just talking about, we want to find, like I said, what we call our high payoff drills. So they're giving like a heck yes to our nervous system because they're like, it's not always about calming, but I'm just going to use the word calming in this instance because we want to come out of activation while we're stressing about not being able to sleep. Okay. Okay. So for the time we have left, I want to address something that we haven't talked about yet that I mentioned in the WhatsApp group. We've talked about how like the way sleep works is it's this it happens because of the relationship between sleep drive and wake drive, right? And that sleep drive gets disrupted by arousal, all types of arousal. So we've talked about circadian arousal, we've talked about what we call other arousal, which is essentially all of the different stressors and not resting enough during the day. We've really gone in deep on that stuff. The one piece that we haven't talked about necessarily is the other part of arousal, which is called conditioned arousal. And this is what can happen when are you both familiar with like the Pavlov's dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So famous experiment with dogs, rang a bell, gave the dogs meat, and essentially then conditioned them to start drooling just at the sound of the bell. And so for people with insomnia, bed is the bell. That's what's happening. So all the hours that you've spent tossing and turning have actually conditioned your brain to be awake and unhappy in bed. I know, it's not awesome. So your brain sees bed and is basically like, oh, yes, I know this place. It's where we stare at the inside of our eyelids while reviewing our to-do list, right? Or whatever it might be. Um, and this applies to like, even if you don't have trouble falling asleep, but you struggle to get back to sleep in the middle of the night, same effect. Like your brain has seen enough 3 a.m. wake ups and battling to get back to sleep that as soon as there's that blink of wakefulness, which is a very normal thing, we wake up in the middle of the night on multiple occasions, very normal. But when you've got that conditioned arousal, that wakefulness basically is your brain's signal to like dial up full alertness. And then you worry and start getting songs running through your head and you come up with all your like best ideas and all that kind of stuff, right? And so what we want to do in that case in order to kind of fix, I guess, conditioned arousal is we need to learn to be sleepy in bed and we have to only sleep in bed. So things like watching TV, scrolling, eating, working, or like if you're doing some, studying or something like that. Just, yeah, being on social media, even having like, if you have a partner, being in big conversations with your partner while you're both laying in bed. We need to stop those things and can start to condition your mind, so your brain, so that it is only seeing bed as the place where sleep happens. I'm curious, how is that, like when I talk about that, is that applicable to either of you? Or we, I guess, what are you asking is applicable, Rebecca? So with the conditioned arousal, I know Chelsea shared in the chat that yes, that is something she experiences. So I'm curious, when it comes to doing other stuff in bed, is that kind of part of your routine at this point?
Not really. I think the only thing for me that I do pretty much every night is I'll crawl into bed and I'll read.
Yeah, totally fine. That's cool. Yeah.
And I, like there's the odd time where it's like you turn on the TV, but that's like very rare. Like, I mean,
Okay.
sometimes like if my boyfriend's watching some, like Deadliest Catch in the living room, I'll go to the bedroom to watch my girly show because,
Right.
we only have so much space, but
Yeah.
like it wouldn't be a regular thing.
Okay. Okay. How about you, Heather?
Yeah, I read, and I only read like hard copy in bed.
Yeah.
It's the one thing you said that I do sometimes though when I wake up, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I have good ideas. So occasionally I'm like I literally, and usually when it's more when I'm traveling for work and you're in a hotel room and you kind of spent too much time in that room, and I'll wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I got to write some of this down. And
Yeah.
but it does help to write it down and let it go.
Yes.
But that's kind of the only like sort of activity when I wake up sometimes, is like, okay, I feel like I'm doing something here, so let me get it out.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And you know what? I'm a huge fan of that. I keep my phone I charge it in our primary bathroom now. I don't have it on my nightstand anymore. And so because I would often wake up and have ideas or think of something. And I'm like, okay, yeah, everybody has told me like, write it down to get it out of your head. And so I'd reach over, pick up my phone and write it in a notes app or something. But now I just literally keep paper and pen next to my bed, and I'll wake up in the morning and it'll be like some chicken scratch on this piece of paper of something I don't want to forget. It doesn't happen that often, but okay, well, yeah, thank you for sharing. And I would challenge you to think about the fact that there is probably one other thing that you are doing in bed that is a non-sleep activity that I didn't list previously, and it's this. It's trying to fall asleep. Just saying. Just saying. So one of the most studied and kind of proven ways that we can move through this is with something called CBTI. I'm not sure if either of you have heard of that, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And so what that involves is a range of different things, but one of the key activities or pieces, if you will, of CBTI is getting up out of bed when you can't fall asleep. When you've been awake for a certain amount of time, we don't time it, we don't look at the clock, but when you notice that you're wide awake and you're thinking about falling asleep and you're trying really hard to fall asleep, is to actually get up and do something else. It's something called stimulus control. And like I said, there's no specific time. So I'm not going to say to you, like, if you've been laying there and you notice you've been wide awake for 20 minutes, get up and go do some like low key activity in low light, that type of thing. Because it's more about how you feel, right? Like, are you laying there and you're kind of happily drifting off, or are you wide awake and kind of cursing your sleep in that moment? Are you on the verge of falling asleep, or are you laying there thinking about the fact that it's just not going to happen? And so there's an analogy that gets used about this, and it's like this idea of playing tug of war, right? It's playing tug of war with your sleep, and we're pulling the rope and we're pulling it so hard to try to get to sleep, which we know doesn't work. So in these moments, we drop the rope, we get out of bed, and we go do something until we, at such point, we feel sleepy. We go back to bed. And sleepiness, like we've learned, sleepiness and tiredness are two different things, but sleepiness is really when our body feels heavy and relaxed and our eyes are kind of droopy and our mind is drifting off and we're unfocused. And if you are reading a book or listening to a podcast or something, your attention starts to wander, or you start to kind of lose the plot. You're like, I don't know what I just read there, right? So that's what we're looking for. We're not looking to get up and do something that's going to force us to feel sleepy, because again, that force and effort is fruitless. So you don't want to get up and start reading something super boring. You want to get up and do something that maybe feels relaxing. So it could be reading a book that you enjoy. It could be like if you do, my cousin just started knitting. She loves knitting. She's like 40 and she's knitting sweaters and doing all this fun stuff. So she might get up and just pick up her knitting needles and do that for a bit of time and then go back to bed. So the goal here isn't to, again, force sleep. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so, so important. The goal is reconditioning the brain to see the bed as somewhere where we fall asleep. So we don't want to get up and then go lay on the couch to fall asleep, because then we're conditioning. All of this is about conditioning, 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 conditioning. So we have conditioned ourselves to be behaving in a certain way, and we need to break that conditioning. And so the first step is getting up, getting out of bed, doing something that is going to kind of start to break that loop. The other piece of this too is something that we call sleep consolidation. And so if we're in a position where we are experiencing real insomnia, we're really struggling with that conditioning, then what we can do is, what happens is sometimes we'll end up trying to go to bed at a certain time. Remember, we talked about how we have to be awake for a certain amount of time, usually like 16 to 18 hours, for most of us, in order to get that actual sleepiness. We have to be awake long enough. But what happens is we get into this cycle of like, oh, I slept like crap last night. I'm going to go to bed early tonight and try and fix it and try and get more sleep. But then we end up just laying there again. So we have to kind of go through this process of sleep consolidation where we're reteaching our bodies and brains, and we're condensing the number of hours that we are actually in bed, so that that sleep drive tends to override the arousal even more. So it could be like, what time do you go to bed? I'm curious, both of you. What time are you? It's your typical.
Well, in the winter time, it's usually 8:39, but then I read for an hour.
Okay. How about you, Heather?
I'm more like 10:30, 11.
Okay.
But it's like usually I'm tired, so like kind of like, so then it's like I slept like crap last night, so okay, maybe I need to start down a little bit earlier, and then in the summertime, I guess it gets later, like later. Yeah. I find like that also makes a big impact is the seasonality too. Because like, to be honest, I get bored.
Totally.
I get bored.
It gets worse.
Yeah, like in the wintertime, it's really bad. Like I find it really affects me.
Okay.
Like I'm tired, I want to sleep, but I'm probably not tired enough to fall asleep.
You're tired, but you're not sleepy.
Yeah, you brought that up, I think, in the first call. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, all good. Just a really important distinction to keep in mind, because if we're what time you get up in the morning, typically?
Between 6:30 and 7:30.
Okay. How about you, Heather?
Yeah, I'd be the same.
Yeah. So if we're going to bed at 8:30 and shutting off the lights at 9:30, and then getting up at 6:30. Like that's 10 hours technically in bed, which means what's the time difference between, say, if you get up at 7:30 in the morning and you're going to lay down again at 8:30, that's only 13 hours.
Right.
And we need actually and then you're reading for an hour, which is cool. If that's what you want to do, awesome. But then if you're going to sleep by 9:30 and you see where I'm going with this? It's
Totally.
not creating enough sleepiness. And so then what happens is, again, that conditioning. So then your brain starts to see bed as this place where we just struggle to sleep. And so there's this, and I can share this with you. I can share some resources with you. And I can walk you through it. I can support you through it over like a 4-week period if that's something that you want to try. But it's this sleep consolidation where basically you are setting yourself up so that you may actually not even go to bed. We'll just use Chelsea as the example because you've shared exact times. Like I may say to you, like, okay, if you're getting up at 6:30 and we know that you're like laying in bed for approximately, an hour in the middle of the night or whatever, we might not have you go to bed until like 11:30, right? And so that you're actually getting sleepy versus just feeling tired. Something that you can look at doing. It typically only takes, it's like a sleep reset. And it typically only takes a week or two to actually like get into a rhythm with it. It's a pain in the butt. You track your sleep. It sounds really funny because I'm telling you, don't look at your clock. You're not looking at your clock, but you are basically tracking your sleep so that you can understand how much time you're spending in bed, how much time you're actually sleeping without looking at the clock. It's more of a feeling. But I can share some further resources with you if you want to give this a try. It is, again, it's part of like the CBTI process. And it is when we get to this point where we know that arousal, the other arousal from stress, not resting during the day, all of those things. When we've looked at that piece, when we've looked at circadian arousal and we're doing what we can there, then we go, okay, what is the conditioned arousal that's at play here? And what can I do to support that? And that is this sleep consolidation. I'm not going to be able to walk you through the whole entire thing on this call. And it would be really specific for you, but I can share some resources with you that you can take a peek at and decide if you want to do that. And you don't have to do it with me. You can just do it on your own too. Yeah. How is that, like when I'm talking about that, what's coming up for either one of you?
Yeah, I guess like for me, it's like I'm tired. So
Yeah.
it's like I find I have a hard time focusing on things, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, well, what am I gonna do to entertain myself to stay up? Because
I
I'm
know.
tired. I don't want to watch TV and I can't keep my eyes open to read a book. So that's where I struggle. Like in the summertime, like when it gets later, I find it much easier. My energy levels are different.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah. So like I find, but the winter I find very challenging.
Yeah.
Like it's like 5 o'clock. I'm like, is it like bedtime yet?
I feel you. I am the same way. My schedule it changes. It changes a little bit with each season. And that's normal too. Like right now there are some nights where, we're not eating dinner until like 7:45, and which is late for me. I'm like, I want to be in bed by, 9:30. So eating dinner like an hour and a half earlier doesn't necessarily work for my system, but it doesn't compute for me that oh my gosh, it's already 6:30 or,
right.
Because of the way the light is. So yeah, it takes some getting used to. It takes some getting used to. Okay, I know we're at time, so I want to be respectful of both of your time. We talked about a lot today. I know with these things, how do I want to say this? Like, there's no quick fix when we have gotten ourselves, by no fault of our own necessarily, into a position where we are experiencing insomnia or the conditioned arousal, or it's not our fault. And it takes a bit of time and a bit of practice to change our thoughts around things, and then also be potentially open to working with a system that can get that conditioning dialed in again, meaning something like the sleep consolidation. So give yourself a break, create some awareness around those thoughts this week. I'm going to share some more resources about sleep consolidation. If that's something that you want to explore more of, just let me know and I can point you in the right direction. Yeah, and we'll go from there. Are there any questions that I can address?
No, it's all really great, Rebecca.
Okay. All right, guys. On with your day. I will see you in WhatsApp, and I will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.